right, so today I'm going to be replacing the Palmrest on this laptop. It is an HP 17t-cn000. What it originally came in for was, it was one, not running correctly. Two, you can kind of see it's got a lot of damage over here. We're missing some keys. And it would not start up correctly. I mean, you can kind of see that it's got a lot of like ash and stuff on it. The customer that brought this in, kind of a heavy smoker. She has a problem with one of her hands, so when she's smoking, she has a cigarette in her left hand, drops it onto the keyboard. So we're going to end up replacing this keyboard entirely with a new one. And yeah, let's get going. So I already took the time to get it apart, got all my screws and everything here. Go ahead and get the bottom pulled off here, because the bottom is going to be staying. Then set that off to the side. So now this is the long, annoying part of replacing a keyboard on a modern laptop. You can kind of see that. See if I can get a little bit better view for you guys here. Kind of see on modern laptops that get some light going on. There we go. There are no screws. So underneath all of these things, there would normally be screws, but there's not. The way they hold these in place is like this, which that looks like a screw, not a screw. What they do is they take a soldering iron type device and then just press the plastic down so it holds the keyboard in place. So when you're in a situation where you need to go and replace a keyboard on one of these newer computers, you end up replacing the whole thing. So that what is involved with that is then removing all the parts from the old keyboard and replacing them and just moving them over one at a time to the new one. And that also includes the screen and everything on all of that. So let's dig into that. So you start at the top, work our way down with these guys. Oh, I wish I had sponsors. That'd be interesting. And we'll take out the battery. Maybe one day. Maybe I'll get PC, the company that makes PC Build Simulator, to sponsor me. I would do some shout outs for that. They can educate people a little bit, make my job easier. Alright, we got the battery out, and there's the 4 screws for the battery. You were asking about the RAM, what kind of RAM it has in it. I don't really need to take this out, but it is PC4 3200. Looks like they got 8 gigs of it. Nope, they have 12 gigs of RAM. Take out the SSD. And you get that enough. That's the screw for that. Make sure I'm grounded here. Yep. So the other thing we're going to be removing is we're going to end up removing the touchpad. My own merch store, maybe. And I've had this conversation in the past on stream a little bit. My problem with merch is, like, in the past, I've sold shirts for, like, some of the forums that I used to be involved with. And the amount of time that went into it for the return that I got, like, I ended up selling 1,000 shirts. And for that 1,000 shirts, I made about $50 after shipping and everything. And it just was not, it was not worth it to me. So, alright, so this screw here corresponds with which screw? This guy? We're going to put that there because that's for the Wi-Fi card. Let's take off this daughter board, or can I yet? It's all one piece. This is interesting. Yeah, it is daughter board hooked up there. All right, so let's go ahead and there we go. Turn. There we go. All right, pull off this daughter board. Set these screws aside. Flip this over. Undo this little ribbon cable. And then we will get this positioned, and I'll have to hook up this ribbon cable in a second. But I'll put this here like loosely so I don't lose these screws. And so I know where they go. Right. Very confused about this. The hell on with adhesive? Okay, we'll see here. See what that is. Alright, let's take out these screws for those hinges. Looks like each hinge has 3 screws, as well as the screw that goes through it to the actual palm rest from the bottom of the case. And you'll notice that when you're taking these guys out, these screws are a little bit heavier duty than most of the rest of the screws that are in here. Sometimes they're longer, sometimes they're not. It doesn't really matter necessarily. These can be, like, the hinges are notoriously difficult to move on their own, so I always use like a little tool to get underneath them to give a little height, so then I can actually rotate the hinges up. We will disconnect the video cable here, and now we should be able to set that off to the side, move this into place. Alright, so now, in theory, actually not in theory, in practice, I should be able to just go ahead and start attaching those hinges. Let me move over this, which is our DC jack. Get this untangled. That, and this goes underneath. I need to take this board out. I guess we'll just leave this off to the side now, seeing as I have to run cable underneath it. This is going to go here, and then it'll come around, and it's going to attach to this. But this cable is going to come this way. Let's go ahead and lower that down. At least they've improved the overall design of these hinges. They used to be that you'd have like individual pieces of metal and individual screws for each of the little components you'd see over here. So like the DC jack would have its own like screw and cover on it. They don't do that anymore, thankfully. It makes it a little bit easier. You have one screw that secures, you have one set of screws that secures absolutely everything, making life a lot easier. Alright, same thing on this side. Let's get this turned down. And this one here, I'm a little bit wary of actually going ahead and putting these screws in here now. Mainly because I have a feeling that I'm not going to be able to get the motherboard in here with it the way it is. But we'll see. And then my last little arrow. One of the things, if you're ever taking a laptop apart and you're working on replacing some stuff. See you later, Emily. If you're ever replacing like something like this and you're curious as to where your screws go, most manufacturers on printed parts will put just a little arrow saying, hey, before you put anything else on, there should be a screw there. So just something to keep an eye out for. Not having luck with my suction cup today. Make sure this guy's down all the way. Down all the way. Down all the way. Alright. Okay. Alright, now we're going to remove CPU heatsink. We don't want to bend that during the process of moving this over. Accidentally short something out on the board. And we'll also remove... Can I remove this independently? I can. There's that. Now remove the fan. And 3 screws. Okay. And our little cable there. And remove this little insert here. Like it seems like this is just in here for noise reasons. Alright, so this is actually a speaker. Interesting. It's held down with adhesive. And a wire goes underneath this. So this wire actually goes all the way over to here. So I actually have to remove the motherboard first. Which is interesting. Motherboard screw. Remove this, which is again a cable for a daughter board, which I'm going to put back in first. Disconnect the touchpad, disconnect the keyboard. Motherboard screw. Motherboard screw. That one's actually a little bit different, so I need to make sure I keep that one separate. So that's the one that goes up there. Motherboard screw. Make sure we disconnect this speaker. Motherboard screw. Motherboard screw. That should be all of them. Now the motherboard should just come out. Now, before we can put this motherboard back in, we have to actually run these speakers, which, like I said, I'm kind of surprised at the way they have this set up. We got our touchpad. We're going to move our touchpad over now, so I don't forget that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Oh. Sure these cables don't get in the way of each other. One, 2, 3, and now we put this over that. One, oops, I gotta take that out. See a little mistake that I just made. Glad I caught this now. This goes underneath these little holders for these things, little cutouts where they go in. 1, 2, and then 3. Alright, so our touchpad is now back in there. Now, let's see how I'm supposed to get these speakers off, seeing as they're apparently held on with adhesive. Yeah, that's just a single piece of adhesive. Interesting. Very strong piece of adhesive at that. So I'll have to do something with that. We'll have this cable back in here. So it needs to go right there. Actually has little indentations that you can kind of make out. When there's a shadow on the board, you can kind of see it. So you just got to follow that line. Alright, and that means we are done with that guy. Now, let me get a piece of... So this was held on with some foam tape. Grab a little square of foam tape. Replace the part that's now missing. And we will flip it. Oh, look at that. So, this actually is held in by a couple screws. Interesting. Let me take this hinge off. So, it's not the hinge, it's actually... Cool. There we go. It's actually this little nubbin up here. And we get these put back in here. Now this guy is not going to go anywhere. And this has a little bit of freedom of movement, so let's... This cable's... I need to route these cables right now. Route these cables underneath. Yep. Around, go to your home. There we go. Under, up. Under, up, under, up. Cool. Let's get this daughter board installed. Let's hook up this cable first, so we don't have a situation where we're forgetting about it. Connected. Gonna go ever so gently right there. One screw, two screw in place. All right. Now this cable, it's got little hooks that hold this in place here. We're gonna make sure this cable gets underneath these hooks. And then one of the other places that it was under is no longer on this one. The old one had a little flap right here that went over the top of that cable, but obviously we can't worry about that because it's physically not there. And then use the adhesive that's already on there to put that in place. Next, we'll place this because that cable is going to be held down by that. That's the fan one, that's the fan one. Alright, so it's these guys. One, two, and three. All right, next we go for the motherboard. Move all these cables and things out of the way. Make sure everything's nice and clear. Does it go underneath that? Yes, it does. There we go. Okay. Now, motherboard screws. We have one. We'll have to adjust this little adhesive a little bit. flat screw. That was a flat one. M2 by 2.5, which is what this is. 2. And where's the last one go? The M2 by 2.5 is right there. And then we have the M2 by 4.0, which is that one. That one. And that one. Alright, so motherboard reinstalled. Let's get our fan. Some more M2 by 4s. Why is the screw trying to be crooked on me? M2 by 2 by 4. Okay. Drop that into place. Make sure this fan is actively plugged in. And all right. So now, printed on these, there's usually an instruction on which ones to do first. They could be 1, 2, 3, 4. These are very faint on this. So this is number 1, number 2, number 3, and number 4. Alright, let's get some of these cables hooked back up. And you do these in the order they tell you to, so you don't over torque one side of it and then mount the cooler crooked and actually crack the die, which would be absolutely terrible. Okay. That into place. 1, 2, 3. There's that, and we move this little adhesive cover that was on here. Move it back to where it goes, which is on top of these cables to prevent any contact with other stuff. And we have the trackpad hooked back up. We have the fan plugged back in. We have the new keyboard. Let's get this in there. There we go, lined up, plugged in. We have, this is the display. Display gets plugged in, hooked up, and we have the speakers. Alright, speakers are plugged back in. Next, I'm actually going to grab the battery, actually hard drive, we'll do the hard drive next, the SSD. Screwed down and secured. Do the battery. Again, there's only a few screws holding the battery in because there's only a couple places you can physically put the screws through. So it's really hard to get confused by that. Some laptops can be very confusing about that. There's that. There's that. That hard drive. There we go. Get that cable plugged back in. This cable goes like that. Alright, now we put the bottom on, which is going to go like that. But before we actually put all the screws back in, flip this bad boy over and make sure that we power on. So we got ourselves a power light. And let's see if we have enough juice to get this thing started up. Might have to plug it in. And there we go. CMOS reset. Enter to restart the computer. Wait 10 to 15 seconds while the CMOS reconfigures itself. And we are starting again. Alright, so now we go ahead and close this. Take out our screws here. And it's like if you have like a bunch of spare pill bottles, I recommend them for holding screws for like a single panel so you don't lose them. Alternatively, I don't have one right now. They make other like pill holders that have multiple compartments. I'd recommend one of those so you can keep different sections of so if I had all the screws for the bottom and then I had all the screws for the motherboard, I'd be able to move them section by section. Alright, so now we're going to click this guy back down onto here. And I have to check. There we go. Go around and click. Now, I would not recommend doing what I'm doing now. Like, if you have a computer that has a standard spinning hard drive, it'd be very bad, but because this one has an NVMe, it's less bad, put it like that. But always make sure the computer's turned off before you're attempting to insert screws and everything. That's what I just did. Just got to shut down. And we go ahead and put these screws back into the bottom. Make sure we didn't put screws where they're not supposed to be, because that is nothing that'll upset you more than you're in the process of going to put screws back in and realizing that you've already put a screw in a hole that wasn't meant for it. There, screw. There's that. That. Take the USB receiver. We're going to plug the USB receiver in. Take these little rubberized pads. Sometimes these can be a pain because when you take them out, they stretch. Which this one thankfully did not. So put that back in there. Nice and clean. Alright, so this one's stretched a little, so you can see it's got this little hiccup. Basically, what you're gonna have to do at that point is to just put in both sides as best you can, and then push towards the center, and then just work it back and forth until you get it back in there. And then flip it over. We get it turned back on. These startup times on these things are quick. And now it's good to go. Got a nice working keyboard here. All right. And that's it. That is how you replace the Palmrest on an HP 17t-cn000. Thanks for watching, and yeah, keep an eye on the channel for more videos like this explaining simple things like this. So, and you can catch me every day on Twitch, twitch.tv/SpecVengeance. And yeah, thanks for watching. Have a good one.